Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of Banter Bets and BPL podcast. Just Liam here today. We've been talking a lot about betting the past couple podcasts, but today we're going to focus on Fantasy Premier League, specifically Fantasy Premier League Draft, okay? I've loved playing Fantasy Premier League Draft for the last few seasons. I've been winning my league, so I'm going to give you guys some tips. And by you guys, I mean the only people who listen, who are the people I'm playing against. So Marco, Pike, all you guys that I've been kicking your ass for the last couple of years, you're welcome for these tips that I'm going to give you. Maybe you guys can actually make it a close one. That goes for Kieran, Keegan, all the guys in our league too. So yeah, here you go. We're gonna go through each team and take a look at the draftable players, okay? And while we're doing that, we're gonna talk about some of the strategies, give you guys some tips for drafting and maintaining a good Fantasy Premier League team, okay? Again, we're focusing on Fantasy Premier League Draft, not the price one. The price one, you know, kind of dumb. Everyone ends up with the same players because you can all have the same players if you pay the price for that player, okay? If you're doing that, step up into the big boy league, do a Fantasy Premier League Draft, okay? And now, first big tip is don't hold on to your players that you draft too tightly, okay? Just because you're going to draft your players, you're going to have maybe 1 or 2 good forwards, 2 or 3 good midfielders, 1 or 2 good defenders, okay? And guess what? Other guys are going to emerge from waivers. Don't be too loyal to your players. Oh, man, I drafted this midfielder. He's my 5th midfielder. I'm going to keep him for the first 10 weeks, even if he's not doing well. No, if he doesn't do good the first 2 weeks, there's a hot free agent, drop him, pick him up, okay? You're going to draft 15 players. You're not going to keep 15 players over the course of the season. Don't be loyal just because you drafted a guy if he starts off the season sucking, okay? If he's a bit more of a higher profile player, someone like last season, like a Dele Alli, who started really slow, but you knew he's got the pedigree, maybe be a little more willing to keep him on. But, you know, if you're drafting guys like, I don't know, Lanzini, as your 5th mid, which is something that I've always done in the past, and I've regretted it because he never performs. But, you know, guys like that tier, like an El Ghazi, you know, crap like that from some of the bad teams in the Premier League, don't hold on to them, okay? If they don't perform, find the hot free agents out there. Because guess what? Fantasy Premier League, it's not one on draft day. You can do really well on draft day, but Fantasy Premier League is one on waivers, okay? There's always hot guys to pick up that can win you your league. Guys like Mikel Antonio, guys like defenders like Enda Stevens, forwards like, I don't think Mopai got drafted last year in many leagues, you know, guys like that that are always going to be available. Jordan Ayew, guys like that, okay? So you need to be on the lookout for these guys in the first couple weeks, which means you're going to need to cut loose some of your dead wood from your teams, okay? So we're going to be talking about the draftable players, and guess what? It's not a big list for a lot of the teams, especially the small teams, because there's not many guys worth drafting, okay? You're not going to be going to draft like the 3rd best midfielder on Aston Villa, right? Because there's no point. You can get midfielders and defenders on waivers that are going to play 90 every week, okay? My strategy is to draft forwards early, because if you're playing in a 14-team league, 14 teams, 3 forwards are going to be gone. There's only like 20 starting forwards in the Premier League, right? That are actually good, and 14 teams. So you're already losing out on them. I like to draft forwards or high profile mids, like Aubameyang's listed as a mid this year. You know, your Salah, your Mane, okay? Get goal scorers right away. I know defenders have high scores. You don't want to draft too many defenders early. Trent is an early defender draft pick. Robertson, Van Dijk, not anyone else worth taking early, okay? I know Trent, and even Trent and Robbo, I don't like them in the first 2 rounds, or Van Dijk in the first 2 rounds, because yes, I know they end up with high points, but you can find value in defenders on the waiver wire all throughout the season, okay? There'll always be defenders who can play. You can stream in defenders for good matchups, okay? You cannot stream in forwards. It's going to be 15 weeks into the season. You're going to be looking at the waiver wire and you're going to see Andy Carroll and saying, oh man, should I pick up Carroll? for the forwards, okay? Like, it's going to be slim pickings. So get your quality forwards in so you don't have to worry about that. You can always find defenders. You can even usually find midfielders on the wire, okay? Goes without saying, draft your goalkeepers late, okay? I've never, ever drafted a goalkeeper not in the earlier than the last 2 rounds, okay? Last year I found Pope in the second last round. There's always going to be guys that you can get in late in the game, okay? I've never been a guy to draft big team goalies. Just don't think it's worth it. Don't think it's worth the earlier investment. What else do we got? Okay, next tip, forget about last season. Don't totally forget about it, but, you know, you're going to be like, oh, man, I really need to draft, I don't know, Pope, for example. No, let everyone else draft Pope early because they're going to see last season, they're going to reach for him, okay? Just like what happened this year. 2 years ago, Ryan Fraser, awesome player, then people reaching for him and he sucks, okay? Especially with small teams, guys who had really good seasons, they're prime candidates to be overdrafted, okay? Don't draft them early. Let someone else draft the, let someone else draft the Pope early. Let someone else draft someone like Jay Rodriguez early, you know, guys like that, okay? Let someone else draft, who else we got here? Let someone else draft Jordan Ayew early, okay? He's a forward, so it's a bit different. This is especially true with midfielders and defenders, guys. Don't be reaching for guys like Lewis Dunk or Tarkowski because they had a good season. You know, let the other teams in your league take those guys. You can find the next one, the next Pope, the next Tarkowski, the next Ryan Fraser, stuff like that, okay? And you can probably find them on waivers instead of wasting a mid to early round pick. What else do we got? Load up on attackers, covered it, forget about last season. Okay, especially in terms of drafting defenders, draft big team defenders, risk it for them, okay? You don't need to be drafting Lewis Dunk. You don't need to be drafting, I don't know, Gary Cahill. You don't need to be drafting Tyrone Mings. You don't need to be drafting anyone on a small team, pretty much, okay? You know, if it's a really, really good attacking defender, like, I don't know, a Van Aanholt I like, or I don't know, an Enda Stevens, those guys you draft, but you don't need to be going all out for the Dunk because, oh man, Dunk scores headers. Okay, yeah, everyone scores headers once in a while. You don't need to be wasting draft picks on guys like Dunk because guess what? Defenders get most of their points, not most of their points from clean sheets, okay? Excluding the high-end attackers like Trent, who's amazing, Robbo, who's amazing, okay? Doherty, guys like that. But other defenders on small teams, you can find them on the waiver wire. Pick them up when they've got their good fixtures. As soon as they don't, drop them, okay? Bring them in, move them out. That's it. So when I'm drafting defenders, I'm more inclined to take a risk on a big team defender that might not play. You know, a guy like, oh, I don't know who's fighting for it. Like a guy like Thiago Silva. He's probably going to start. You don't know. A guy like Reece James doesn't start for sure. I'm definitely wanting to draft a guy like Reece James, a guy like Azpilicueta, someone in that mess of Chelsea defenders or a mess of Arsenal defenders. You don't know who's going to start. Draft one of them ahead of, you know, your Mings, who, oh man, I'm going to lock in Mings. He's going to start every game. Yeah, well, guess what? Aston Villa is going to concede 3 goals every game, and you're going to get 1 point from Mings every week, okay? You can get 1 point from any defender you want off the waiver wire. So go out there, take a risk for the big team defenders. And if they're not playing, then drop them for the ones who are playing. You know, if you draft, I don't know, Mustafi, and he doesn't play the first week, even the first week, the first couple weeks, and Holding's playing instead, drop him for Holding, okay? Be active on those ones. Try and get the big team defenders in because they do have a higher chance of getting you clean sheets for the most part. All right, that's all we're going to talk about for tips. We're going to now go through the first 10 teams, and I'm going to read you my list of draftable players. And I've got a little, I've highlighted one player that you probably shouldn't draft, but keep him on your watch list because I think he could break out this season, okay? So we'll start off, we're going to go alphabetical order. We're going to do 10 teams today, 10 teams either tomorrow or on Wednesday, midweek, just to get you guys ready for your draft. So starting off with Arsenal, and we'll start off with goalkeepers. It's a tough one because Leno was very good last season. Then he got hurt. Martinez came in. I have heard reports that Leno is going to be sold, or sorry, Martinez is going to be sold and Leno is going to be the guy, but in the Community Shield, Martinez played. This is kind of a situation I want to avoid. Obviously, I think Leno is the one you draft first. I think he's more of the long-term solution. But I wouldn't be drafting him above the other big team goalkeepers, except for Chelsea. That's another mess. But you don't want to be reaching for Leno because we don't know 100% sure if he's going to start, right? Martinez, you definitely don't want to be drafting him as your starter because he's probably not going to start. If you draft Martinez as your second goalkeeper, I'm all right with that. Even then, if you draft Leno, then definitely draft Martinez. If you get them both, that's fine. If you want to go that route. But don't be putting all your eggs in the Martinez basket, even though he's looked great. I think he is a good goalie, but, you know, good real life isn't always equal good in fantasy. It's another thing you should always remember. So those guys are draftable for sure. Defenders, it is looking like a mess. Who knows who's going to play? The one guy who's definitely going to play is Tierney. He looked great last season. He's the first Arsenal defender you draft. After that, it's going to sound crazy, but I think David Luiz is draftable, even though he's not good and he'll make mistakes every second game. But guess what? Arteta plays him every game. And like I said, you want defenders who play every game for big teams. Somehow David Luiz plays every week. He even scores goals sometimes, although, like I said, you don't draft defenders for their goal scoring ability because it's very random which defenders score. But I think Luiz is the next best option in that back line. You know, they've still got that Gabriel guy maybe coming in. They've got Holding, they've got Mustafi, they've got a bunch of shit center backs. I think Luiz is the pick of the bunch, a pretty sad bunch. But, you know, Arsenal, they can defend a little bit better sometimes. They had some big results at the tail end of last season. I don't mind risking a later round pick on Luiz. Don't draft him as your top defender, but after that, I think Bellerin will start right back. Maitland-Niles looked good in the Community Shield. He might play. They also got Cedric. I don't love any of those guys. I would be drafting Bellerin first. After that, it's a bunch of crap. It's a crapshoot. Don't waste a draft pick on them, but be on the lookout for week 1, who's starting in Arsenal's back 4, and go pick them up, okay? Instead of wasting a draft pick on a guy who might play, just go pick him up after he does play, okay? So Tierney, for sure. I think he can be if he's your second or third defender, that's a pretty good back line. Luiz, if he's your third or fourth, that's a good back line. Bellerin, fourth or fifth. The rest, waivers. Midfielders. Aubameyang's a midfielder this year. That's huge. He's going to be a top 5 fantasy player as a mid. So, yeah, he's a top 5 pick. Go draft him in the top 5. Set it and forget it. The rest of the midfielders I'm not in love with. Pepe, big name, big price tag. Not a big game player. Didn't do too much last year. Still think he's draftable because you got to take a chance on the opportunity that these guys are being given. Take a chance on an attacker on a team like Arsenal who's going to score a lot of goals. Take a chance on him playing. Bukayo Saka, I like him a lot as a player. I think he's draftable as a 4th or 5th mid. Okay, I don't know how much he's going to play. It's also possible he plays left back, which you don't want your midfielders playing left back, even if they are good like Saka. Willian, I think, is valuable for this team. I don't think he's going to be on penalties. That's how he scored most of his goals for Chelsea last year, so he's not as valuable as he was there. And with these Arsenal, the only attacker on Arsenal you feel 100% about is Aubameyang, and he's a locked-in top 5. So the rest of the guys, Pepe, Saka, Willian, might be worth the dart throw. I'd probably let other people draft them, especially Pepe. He's going to be a high pick, and he wasn't that good last season. Lacazette as your forward. Yep, draft him in the 2nd round and feel good about it. Nketiah, draft him later. Draft him as a 3rd forward, I'd say. I think he plays a fair bit. Does he score a fair bit? Probably not, because he's never shown that he can score goals. Your dart throw, guy to monitor on waivers for Arsenal, Reece Nelson. Pretty good youngster. Arteta plays the youngster sometimes. I think he's someone to monitor on waivers for maybe late in the season, okay? Although it's pretty competitive in that selection in that Arsenal team. All right, let's go on to Aston Villa. This is not going to be as long as that one because guess what? They have like 3 players who are draftable, okay? They're goalkeepers. Heaton's out till at least mid-October. I don't like drafting guys who are out until at least mid-October, especially old guys. They might come back a little later. Okay, I would not be trying to draft Heaton. If you want to draft Heaton and Nyland, the backup, Nyland's probably going to be the starter to start the season. If you want to draft both of those guys and have both goalies playing for a bad team that's not going to keep any clean sheets, then feel free to do that. I don't really like drafting either of them. Maybe draft a good starter and then draft Nyland as your second, and or draft Heaton as your second and wait for him to come back. But don't draft either of those guys as your primary keeper. Defenders, long list of no one. Don't draft any Aston Villa defenders. They don't keep clean sheets. There's no good attacking defenders on their team. Oh, but man, Mings plays for England. Yeah, who cares? He plays for Aston Villa in Fantasy Premier League, and you don't want to draft defenders that play for Aston Villa because they're not good. Midfielders, Jack Grealish. Obviously, you're going to draft him with a fairly early round pick and feel good about it. You might even feel better about it if he transfers to Manchester United and starts playing there. But I don't mind him staying on Villa because, you know, he's option 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. He's their only attacking option. So I like him. Even though Villa doesn't score a lot, when they do score, Grealish is involved. McGinn, I think, is draftable as a 4th or 5th mid. He was really, really good to start last season. Got injured, unfortunately. He might be a candidate for overdrafting, especially from my brother Kieran, who loved him last year. Probably take him in like the 3rd round or something crazy like that. So if you're in my league, let Kieran overdraft him. If you're not in my league, draft him as a 4th or 5th mid and feel good about it. Just so you guys know, I'm talking about 14-team leagues because I feel like that's the hardest. Obviously, it's hardest with 14 teams. So when I say 4th or 5th midfielder, I'm assuming you're in a 14-team league. If you're in less, then it moves up, obviously, or it moves down. Your 4th or 5th mid is going to be on waivers in an 8-team league, right? But he might have value in a 14-team league. Forwards, Wesley's hurt, wasn't that good anyway. Don't draft him. Don't know when he's coming back. Samatta isn't very good. Might be the only guy there left to play. Not much of a goal scorer. Draft him as your 3rd forward. Hope he plays. Don't be depending on it. Don't be holding on to him tight if there's a hot free agent at the start. The guy I want to keep my eye on from the waiver wire is Trezeguet. Finished last season strong. There's not much else for Aston Villa. Someone else has got to step up. Maybe he can be a midfielder who actually nails down a place that isn't named Jack Grealish, or like an attacking midfielder not named Grealish that nails down a place and actually contributes. So keep an eye on him from the waivers. Don't draft him. We'll move on to Brighton. Brighton, goalkeeper Matt Ryan, steady goalie, not like the Villa situation. You can draft him. If you miss out on the big fish, draft him as a starter. And ride them and hope that they defend well. Their defenders, no draftable defenders. Man, but Lewis Dunk scores headers. Yeah, he scores maybe 1 or 2 a season. You don't draft defenders because you think you're going to score 1 or 2 headers a season, okay? Because it's just random when they happen. He could score no headers this season, okay? There's going to be defenders on waivers that score 3 headers this season, okay? So you're not going to go out of your way to draft Dunk or any one of their defenders. Unless they start playing, keep an eye on if they play one of the young fullbacks further forward, like a Lamptey or someone like that, then he could have value as a very attacking defender. Midfielders, love Trossard. Think he's a nice sleeper this year. Looked really good last season. He's got some swagger. He's a good player. Draft him as your 3rd or 4th mid and hope for the best. Lallana comes from Liverpool. This is a prime overdraft candidate. Oh, man, he's coming from Liverpool to a small team. He's going to be awesome. He's also not played soccer for the past 4 years at a high level. So I would not draft him. Let someone else overdraft him because he's a big name coming from a big team. He'll probably get overdrafted. The other midfielders, no, Gross maybe, but he's not been good for the past season. I can't remember. Was it 2 seasons ago he had a good season, but last season was not worth owning. So don't draft them. Forwards, you want Mopai. Mopai's a solid forward, 2nd or 3rd forward. I wouldn't be targeting him as my main striker, but as a 2nd option, you're looking all right. As a 3rd option, if he's your 3rd best forward, you're looking excellent. Guy to keep an eye on, Connolly. Don't draft him. Watch him from the waivers. Probably won't play much, but he's got a bit of versatility. He could play off the forward. He could play up there alone. So I think he's one to keep an eye on from the waiver wires. I also like Alzate as a deep, deep, deep sleeper. Keep him on your watch list on the waiver wire as a midfielder. Let's move on to Burnley. Goalkeeper Pope. Pope was awesome last year. Does that mean Pope's going to be awesome this year? It does not mean it. He's a good goalie. Burnley are a pretty good defensive team, so I like him as a starter. But last season he was like the best. He was the best goalie in fantasy Premier League. So guess what? Some dumbass is going to draft him way too high this year. Don't be that dumbass. But if you somehow get him in the last 3 rounds and he's still there, which he won't be, then you draft him like that. But you're going to be able to find other goalies in the last 3 rounds. So don't go nuts for Pope. Defenders, following the theme of the other teams a little bit, don't love any of the defenders because, yes, Burnley was solid last year. Does that mean they'll be solid this year? No, they're a little bit up, down. They have good seasons. They have bad seasons. Don't bank on them just being as good as last season. If you're going to draft one, Peters was playing a little bit of midfield last year. So I love, and you should love too, defenders that play in the midfield because they can have fantasy value because they attack like midfielders, but they get clean sheet points like defenders. So I'd be watching to see in the early weeks if he is playing midfield. If so, scoop him up. Maybe even draft him as your 5th defender just in case. Tarkowski, good player in real life. Doesn't mean he's a great fantasy player. Don't mind him as a 5th defenseman if you're getting a 5th defender, if you're getting desperate in the late rounds and you want to feel good about drafting a Burnley player. Midfielders, McNeil is the only one I want. And even then, don't draft them too highly because Burnley mids don't really score goals. Speaking of Burnley players scoring goals, the forwards is who you want. You want Wood. Wood's a good forward. He's a good second forward option in fantasy leagues. He could even be a first forward if you're shifting your attention to midfielders or defenders in the early round, which I don't love, but you might have that strategy and it's not horrible. If he's your 3rd best forward, you are living. And then after that, I like Jay Rodriguez. I don't think he's as good as he showed last year because I don't think he'll play every game if Barnes is healthy again. So it's a bit of a toss-up between Rodriguez and Barnes. I would lean towards Rodriguez at the start of the season because Barnes was out for a long time. But if Barnes starts playing over Rodriguez, drop him. Pick up Barnes, okay? If Rodriguez scores, 3 goals in the first 7 weeks and then he stops playing, drop him. Do not be loyal to him because he'll be on your bench or he'll be on the bench getting you 0 points or 1 point. But I think he could have a hot start to the season. Talk much. So you can draft him as your 3rd forward. All right, let's move on to Chelsea. Goalkeeper, stay away until the late rounds. Then maybe Kepa or Willie Caballero could be a steal. But don't go drafting them like, you're going to draft a Lloris, a Allison, an Ederson, guys like that are going to play, even a Patricio, guys like that on good teams that are going to play because we don't know who's going to play, Kepa or Willie. I would lean towards Kepa over Willie. I bet you they give him another chance to prove that he's not the worst goalie in the league. He'll probably prove that he is the worst goalie in the league, so don't be wasting a big round, a higher pick than you need to on Kepa or Willie. Maybe they bring a goalie in like an Onana or something that could change things. Then you want to be targeting Onana. For now, don't be aggressively targeting Kepa or Willie. Take them in the late rounds if you want to potentially get a steal if one of them steps up and plays because they aren't a big team, so they have a high ceiling. Defenders, much of the same as Arsenal. We don't know who's going to play. We do know that Chilwell will play. I assume. They just bought him for like $50 million, so I'd be targeting him. He's also hurt right now, which isn't great, so don't target him too aggressively, but I think he will be a good player. If you can target 4 other solid defenders, and then, you'll have to invest an earlier defender pick on Chilwell, but then don't be drafting other hurt guys if you're drafting him, okay? Reece James, I love. Not 100% sure he's going to play. He's a good player, though. Target him as your 3rd defender, 4th defender. Really hope he plays. And really hope they don't play Azpilicueta right back because that is boring. Okay, speaking of Azpilicueta, don't mind him as a pick. I don't know if he's going to play. They got so many crappy defenders there. Azpilicueta, Thiago Silva, Rudiger, Christensen. Oh, I would say use the wait and see approach, see who's playing first week and run to waivers and pick them up. Okay, if you want to risk a 5th defender pick on a guy like Christensen or Rudiger because you think they're going to play, sure, just don't bank on them playing. Midfielders, love Pulisic. He was unreal to end the season last year. Target him early, first 3 rounds. Ziyech, target him first 3 rounds, probably going to be good. Mount, target him first 4 rounds, 5 rounds. The unlucky thing is they probably can't play all of those guys, so I would lean towards going Pulisic for sure. Ziyech, they pay a lot of money for. They got to play him. Unfortunately, I like Mount. I think he might be not an automatic starter, so maybe that's the one you want to fade a little bit, let someone else draft. Forwards, draft Werner early in the first round. He's probably going to be awesome. Pains me to say it because I hate Chelsea, but he'll be good. Draft Abraham later. If Abraham's your 2nd or 3rd forward, I don't mind it. I still think they're going to play him. It would be really disappointing if you waste an early pick on him and he doesn't play, so I wouldn't be too aggressive on Abraham. I'd be aggressive on Werner. He's their guy. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do my watch from waivers for Burnley and Chelsea. For Burnley, it's Gudmundsson. Okay, don't draft him, but he has shown in the past he can be a fantasy relevant player, so watch for him from waivers. Maybe he can emerge as another fantasy relevant midfielder alongside McNeil. For Chelsea, the hyphenated last name boys, watch them from waivers. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, talented player. If he starts playing, I think he can be a really good center mid. Callum Hudson-Odoi, less likely to be playing, so maybe we'll just go with maybe we'll just watch Ruben Loftus-Cheek from waivers. Hopefully he gets healthy. If so, he's a really good player, and you might want to run to waivers and pick him up if he is a starter to start the season. Moving on to Palace, their goalkeeper, Guaita. I think that's how you say it, Guaita, the Spanish guy with the blonde hair. Pretty good goalie, average goalie. Draft him as your starter, and if you're not going for the big boys, he'll probably be available in the last couple of rounds. So yeah, he would do well for you. Defenders, I would not target any of them. I looked on the site. It looks like all of their defenders are hurt right now. So you do not need Crystal Palace defenders in your team, especially not when they're hurt. Keep an eye on Patrick Van Aanholt from the waivers because he is a good attacking defender, especially when they got easy fixtures. I don't mind having him as your 4th or 5th defender. Midfielders, the list starts and ends with Wilf Zaha. He's a bit more exciting in real life than in fantasy, but he's still a good fantasy player. Okay, draft him as your third mid, 2nd, 3rd mid, and hope that he scores a bit more and does a few less step overs and more shooting the ball in the net. But exciting player to watch at the very least for your fantasy team. Forwards, Ayew looked pretty good last year. I think he's a candidate to be overdrafted because he was a bit of a breakout last year. But I still don't mind him as your 2nd or 3rd forward. Already talked about Van Aanholt. Keep an eye on him. Everton, goalie, Pickford. Not a good goalie, but plays for Everton. Everton should be a top half team. So in fantasy, he's not a bad choice, even though he's not a great goalie in real life. So draft him as a starter. Feel okay about it unless he really, really drops off and loses his spot. But I don't see that happening. They've had lots of faith in him. Defenders, love Luka Digne. Draft him as your 2nd defender. He's shoots and scores free kicks. Gets forward and crosses. He's a good 2nd defender. I don't think he's a top-tier defender. I think he's a 2nd one. But he's a good one to target. If you're targeting him aggressively, I like that. After that, I do like Holgate, solid defender. I do kind of like Michael Keane, a little less solid, but a bit more of an aerial presence. And then it should be Coleman starting right back, okay? It might be John Joe Kenny. He's back from loan from Schalke, so maybe keep an eye on that situation early doors. I'd probably draft Coleman, though, over Kenny, obviously. Midfielders, it's Sigurdsson. It's not Walcott. It's not Bernard. It's definitely not Iwobi. You don't need any of that trash. Draft Sigurdsson. He was disappointing last year. He might be a candidate that you can get a little later on because he's the opposite. He kind of slumped last year. He's opposite of a breakout player. So maybe there's value on him, drafting him. Forwards, love Richarlison, love Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Those two can be, I think, your top forward if your earlier picks are midfielders. And if you're drafting top forwards, then if you have these guys as your second or third forwards, then I think they're going to score a lot of goals, and that's good. So target those guys aggressively. My watch list guy for Everton is a deep sleeper, Anthony Gordon, young player who was playing pretty well at the end of last season. Just watch him from waivers. Obviously, don't waste a draft pick on him. Fulham, goalkeeper. Looks like they play Rodak. They also have Bettinelli. I'd be drafting Rodak over Bettinelli in the last 2 rounds there, when you can get these kind of no-name goalies that play every week, hopefully. Defenders, Joe Bryan scored 2 goals in the playoff final, and he's a defender. Don't draft him. He plays for Fulham. He's not going to score 2 goals every week in the Premier League, okay? Don't draft any Fulham defenders. There's not any Enda Stevenses by the looks of it, even though Bryan did score goals. I don't know. If you want to take a late-round flyer on Bryan, last round, sure. He's not going to score twice every week in the Prem. Sorry, guys. Midfielders, doesn't look great. Cabano, Camara listed as midfielders. I think Camara plays forward a little bit. So that might not be a bad 5th option. You're not drafting any Fulham midfielders to be anything but a 4th or 5th option. And like I said, with those 4th or 5th midfielders, you're dropping them like that if they're not playing. So don't hold on to these guys tightly. Josh Onuma, highly rated player, played pretty well last season apparently. I say apparently because I'm not going to pretend that I watched a championship week in, week out. Follow it loosely. But I think he's a nice watch list player or a last round dart throw. Forwards, the big man Mitrovic is back. Target him early and often because he scores goals even on bad teams. So if Fulham is even, like, he was a top 10 fantasy forward 2 years ago, and Fulham was the worst team in the league. So if they're even a little bit better, maybe he'll be better. Target him as your second striker. If you want to be competitive with the strikers, you could even be a first striker at a pinch. Bobby Reed is also there. He doesn't score goals, so I probably wouldn't draft him. Maybe watch him from the wires. Leeds. Goalkeeper was a bit of a mess. Kiko Casilla, I guess his name. Casilla is his first name, his last name. I think Kiko Casilla. He's probably on the way out. He got fined for racism, or banned for racism for like 8 games last year. So not really a guy you want on your team. And I don't think he's going to be playing anyways. It looked like they were playing Meslier. I don't even know who that is, but Meslier was the guy that was in their lineup to end last season. Defenders, these guys might actually have some attacking defenders, okay? Stuart Dallas, good defender, good attacking defender. Don't mind targeting him as your last defender. I was also looking at Alioski and Ayling as potential good defenders. Leeds could be kind of like a Sheffield last year, where none of their defenders are owned at the start. 4 or 5 of their defenders are owned at the end of the season. So maybe not going to be expensive or you're not going to have to pick their defenders with a high pick. So keep an eye on them when you're picking your 4th or 5th defenders in the last couple rounds. Midfielders, Pablo Hernandez has some Premier League experience. I wouldn't want to pick him as anything more than a 4th or 5th mid. Helder Costa, same deal, 5th mid, maybe. Don't love their midfielders. Forward is Patrick Bamford. Doesn't score a lot of goals, but he has ample opportunity. He's like their only forward. He plays a lot for a team. And yeah, you want starting strikers. So, because they are few and far between. So yeah, draft him. My watch list guy is Jack Harrison. Good talent. Keep an eye on him from waivers as a midfielder. All right, last one for today. I know it's been long, guys. Bear with me. Leicester, their goalkeeper is Schmeichel. Good goalie to draft, solid. Saved some penalties even. Yeah, he's a good goalie. I don't think Leicester will be as high as last season. They're going to be playing Champions League, so they might drop down in the Premier League table, but he's still a solid goalie. Okay. I don't mind targeting Schmeichel. I don't really want to target any of their defenders because they're all hurt or banned for the first couple games because Johnny Evans is an idiot and took a stupid red card in the last game of the season. Tangent aside, draft Sayuncu. He's the only fit center back right now. Pereira is hurt. I really, really like Pereira. If you want to take him, if you see that, you know, people see the red beside his name in the draft and he starts sliding, then yeah, take a flyer on him. Because I think he'll be available a little later because he's hurt. Just make sure if you're drafting him, you're drafting 4 other fit defenders, right? You don't want to be drafting him and Chilwell because they're both starting the season hurt. But when Pereira comes back in October, he'll be valuable. Before that, you could draft James Justin, okay, as a late round pick. Draft Pereira maybe a little early, Aaron Justin, then you got the Leicester starting right back, and that's not bad. When Pereira comes back, obviously you drop Justin, assuming Pereira gets back into the team, which you definitely will. Midfielders, I would target Maddison, then Barnes, then Tielemans in that order. I think they're all good players. They don't always contribute in fantasy, but I think those are the 3 draftable ones. Perez is a late round dart throw. I don't think he'll be playing too much. He wasn't really a regular last year. Their forward that you're targeting is the man Jamie Vardy. Of course, you want him with a late first-round pick. You're going to have to pay for him, but he's dependable. He scores lots of goals. He'll be in for the Golden Boot or in and around there. Ihe Nacho is probably not worth drafting, so don't draft him because he won't play. All right, guys, that was a long one. Remember, don't reach for players like Ozil, big names like that. You don't want guys who aren't going to play and who are going to cost you. If you're spending a, second, third, fourth, fifth, top 5 round pick on a guy, you want him to be playing almost certainly. So don't be risking it for guys like Ozil who aren't going to play and say, oh man, but he plays for Arsenal. No, he doesn't play for Arsenal. He has an Arsenal jersey in the game, which makes you want to have him on your team, but he doesn't play for Arsenal because he never plays. Okay? So that's what I'll leave you with. Later on in the week, we'll be going through the teams Liverpool through West Ham, Liverpool through Wolves, the last 10 teams there, talking about players to target. Thank you very much. That was a lot of talking for me. Didn't have Keegan on this one because he doesn't know as much about fantasy as me. He will now because I'm giving him all my secrets. But yeah, use that as you will, guys. Go win your league. Unless you're in my league, then just ignore me, please. Don't even watch this. All right, that's it for episode 3 of Banter Bets and BPL. If you're making bets out there, then bet safely. And if you're drafting this week, then draft safely as well, and good luck.